what people are saying is that if we leave the EU, it's disastrous because of all the we'll lose leverage, blah, blah, blah. It pays us to sell our goods to other people in the world market and to take their goods at world prices. That will lower our cost of living. We have actually done a simulation of leaving the EU, and the first thing that comes out is an 8% drop in the cost of living on day one because of the move from EU prices to world prices. Now that is really worth having. As I've kind of argued already, we don't need to do trade agreements with anybody else. I mean, frankly, we can take the world price. And if we do a trade agreement with, say, I don't know, New Zealand or something, it won't affect the world price we get. It'll affect what New Zealanders have to pay for our goods. Because, we sell the stuff at the world price, and then the New Zealanders, if they put a tariff on it, their consumers have to pay more. So it's really a problem for them, not for us. And so I'm sure we will do trade agreements. There's nothing. I'm not doctrinally against trade agreements. I'm merely saying that they're not necessary for our well-being in terms of leaving the EU. The customs union itself is extremely expensive to us. The regulations that are increasingly put on us in labour markets and financial markets are very onerous to us and, of course, cost us serious resources. And they also hold back growth. Many of these regulations are not in line with free market principles. The model we want is the model of a standard self-governing country. I don't know why it is that everyone seems to assume we've got to become a small dependency of the EU, even when we leave the EU.
Well, we've got that.
If you ask me, do we have to have all the regulations of the EU in order to sell that 9% of our GDP to the EU? I'd say no, because the other 91% of GDP will be free of those regulations, and it will operate according to the regulations we, as a self-governing country, think are good for our industries. And there's absolutely no reason for them to be the same as the EU. None at all. Obviously, if the EU insists on certain things it wants in those exports, standards, whatever they might be, obviously if you export to the EU, you'll have to do it. By the way, our trade with the EU is contracting as a share of our total trade, whereas our trade with everywhere else is expanding. But yes, it's 9% of our GDP. So if you're telling me that the other 91% of the economy has got to comply with everything in the EU in order for that little 9% to export, I say to you, where's that come from? At the moment in the EU, what's happening, and this is the big cost to us from all this trade protectionism that comes with the EU baggage, the big cost to us is that we are forced, a lot of our industries are protected inside the EU, and so our comparative advantage is distorted into industries that really we're not very good at. That's the key thing. So I'd say for a global market, we can focus on these industries where we are good and make sure that they are highly competitive. And then, as I said earlier, we really don't need trade agreements. I'm not particularly against them. I'm perfectly happy for other people to have trade agreements, and there may be minor things that... But of course, in the case of the US, it is our oldest trading partner. We have massive trade with the US in these products you're talking about already. And the EU has much less trade with the EU than with the US than we do. If you include the whole service area, we're already deeply integrated into the US market. And so for us, TTIP is kind of like, I think, a minor kind of extra element in the story. If the Indian, economy decides not to allow British insurance, there's plenty of other people who will be ready to buy British insurance, and it's a global market. I mean, the insurance industry in the City of London is the world's biggest market, and it deals with every part of the world, so that it's not dependent on any one country to sign a trade agreement with us. And this illustrates perfectly my point that the insurance industry is going to survive fine whether or not India, wants to liberalize. Obviously, we'd all prefer if India liberalized. It's good for India. But it's actually from our point of view, the big issues here are, do we want to be part of a global market with free trade, or do we want to be inside the EU, inside a customs union with highly restrictive policies and extremely tough and, excessively interventionist regulative policies? That's the issue for us, and that's the big issue that really completely dominates all this detail of trade agreements that once we leave this organization. What, of course, then happens is we leave, we become a normal country outside the EU, which is something that many countries are, and we then face world prices. And that is immensely better than being inside the EU's wonderful tariff wall, because that protects too many bad industries. Compared with what we would have if we were out there in the global market selling the things we're good at, our comparative advantage, which is enormously liberating for us and would stop us thinking of ourselves as a regional player, which we are not, but give us the mindset of a global player, facing world markets. And we're a small global player, so all we've got to do is produce things that are good, we can sell for high prices to anybody around the world. And as I said, the world is a very big marketplace. So if somebody wants to put extra tariffs on us, that again makes no difference to my calculations. Now, as you rightly said, and I believe the EU will want to sign an agreement with us because it's in its interest, because they sell us so much stuff at inflated prices, net. And so they will want, the boot will be entirely on the other foot to what most people say. Instead of us going cap in hand to the EU saying, please sign an agreement with us, they will come cap in hand to us saying, please sign an agreement with us because we want to sell to you.